Hey there guys, I bring good news today, and it comes from one of the most unlikely of places, a New York City courtroom. But the race pimps are mad. First guys, go check out my friends X-Tech. These guys make some of the finest aftermarket magazines on the market by far. If you're looking for a replacement magazine for a series of different guns, in fact, more of the most popular guns out there are going to be represented by aftermarket mags by X-Tech. You want to check out the Smith & Wesson M&P replacement magazines for the FPC. Of course, those of you that have the FPC know that the M&P magazines for the handgun are also interchangeable here. The beauty is you can actually use these X-Tech magazines in either one. Now, why are the X-Tech magazines even better than the ones that are shipped? Well, obviously, higher quality. These X-Tech magazines are made with a high quality Italian magazine body, stainless steel spring, and guys, look, they look a ton better than what ships with the actual firearm. So whether you're looking at one of the M&P handguns or the FPC model, you're going to get a magazine that works in both. They're interchangeable and very, very high quality. You will not regret your purchase. Go check them out. X-Tech, the best aftermarket magazines on the market. As most of you have heard by now, Daniel Penny was acquitted of criminally negligent homicide after a more serious manslaughter charge was dismissed. Justice was certainly served, and you talk about one of the hardest places to get justice served if you even have the appearance of leaning to the right, is an Alvin Bragg courtroom in New York City. Obviously, he's already weaponized the judicial system against Donald Trump, and he's trying to do it against a white man for political reasons. Remember, the DA is an elected position. This was all about politics. Always has been about politics. And he felt like that was the right angle to do, to take an innocent man who choked out a guilty man and make that political so that he could win in his next election. This may actually backfire on him because now it's looking like everything that Alvin Bragg touches turns to crap, because he's making all the wrong decisions, trying to weaponize the justice system, and it's starting to reflect really poorly on him. Now, you might remember that the way most of these things work, and I am no attorney, I am going to wade as far into the pool of legal authority as I can possibly get without drowning, but I'm going to tell you, when you hear people talk about the first charge, whenever they read out verdicts, regarding the first charge, we find the defendant, blah, 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 guilty, not guilty, or a hung jury. The prosecution last week in this Penny case knew that based on conversations with the jury that they were not going to get on their charge one, their count one, they were not going to get a guilty verdict. In fact, they probably weren't even going to get a not guilty verdict, to be quite honest with you. It would have been a hung jury because it was a split decision. There were members of the jury, which, by the way, some of these racists are saying, oh, it was a nine white people, which means there were 3 people of color on there. That almost reflects the percentage of people who live in this country. So it sounds to me like the jury might have actually represented, if you're wanting to do this based on race, which they always are, might have been a fair jury after all. But I digress. So the jury was not going to be able to give them the guilty verdict that they wanted. Again, remember guys, you're talking about a DA who didn't want justice. He wanted a guilty verdict in spite of what the facts might have shown. Again, he had his mind made up well before any of this came out and well before any of the evidence was shown to the actual jury. So when he realized he was not only wasn't going to get his guilty verdict for the manslaughter charge, but he was probably going to get a hung jury, which meant that count 2 could not be used. In other words, if you get a split decision or a hung jury on count 1, it doesn't even matter in relation to count 2. Count 2 is completely off the table because count 1 was found to be a hung jury, right? So all bets are off. Now, that's not pleasing to the prosecution in this case, and they saw that. They sensed that they weren't going to get that. So they said, you know what we're going to do? And this is not how the judicial system works. This is why I tell you I don't have confidence in the judicial system. They decided to just drop count 1. And we're going to go straight to the criminally negligent homicide, which was count 2, and drop count 1, which was the manslaughter charge. Again, I'm no attorney, but I've never heard of that happening before. I don't even think that it's legal to do that. I mean, if you're going to have a hung jury, it should not even go to that second one. You shouldn't be able to pre-decide what, put your finger and say, all right, looks like we're not going to get one. Let's just drop it so we can get something. It's not how it works. But that didn't even work. You know why? Because instead of what the headlines were trying to read on this, which they were saying that a well-trained military Marine on a subway choked out or strangled, they were saying strangled a street dancer. They had this thing all whipped up into something that it wasn't. We're not talking about a street dancer here. We're not talking about some well-trained Marine. Let me be very clear on the well-trained Marine thing. And this is no disrespect to Marines, because believe me, if I'm going to pick a class of people, I know so many Marines, probably more Marines than anything, that are very close friends of mine, and they're very well-trained guys, good guys. But I want to make this very clear. There's this weird misconception out there, especially with the media, that if you were in the military, somehow you are some kind of well-oiled killing machine. And anything you do was because you had the training for a killer. Cold-blooded killer. That guy was in the military. Oh, that's practically a contract killer. Those of you who were in the military, please sound off in the comment section below. Are they really spitting out? I mean, I know the answer to this. This is rhetorical. Are they really spitting out contract killers? I mean, you've seen how low they've lowered the requirements in the military. And this is not a knock against those in the military that are good soldiers, Marines, sailors, and whatnot. But let's be really honest. They've lowered the standards in the military. They ain't spitting out contract killers. So miss me with the whole, oh, he was a Marine, so he used his tools. His bare hands were deadly weapons because he was in the military. Come on, man, really. But since they weaponized the media, just like they weaponized the DOJ, they had this thing all spelled out as if it were some kind of contract killer going after a dude dressed up like Michael Jackson doing the moonwalk, entertaining people on a subway train. That was not the case. You guys know the details that came out about this, so I'm not going to rehash the whole thing. I'm very grateful that justice was served, so this guy did not have to spend another cent of his money on some kind of frivolous political trial. I don't know what's taking place with his campaign. I'm not going to offer to give the guy money unless I know that he's in the poorhouse as a result of trying to set himself free with his attorneys. I don't know what his relationship with his attorneys are, but I would be willing to help him if he is in the hole as a result of this. Now, if these attorneys did some kind of a pro bono thing, knowing it would be a high-profile case, which they very likely did, then obviously I'm not going to pay the attorneys just for representing the guy. But if they were sending this guy an invoice and he's upside down on his note to pay this, I would be willing to help him, because this is one of those cases where I'm glad to see that we at least have some attorneys, even though this was a pretty clear-cut case to me, we have attorneys out there that are looking for the right thing to be done for somebody instead of bailing on this guy or having him plead to some stupid lesser charge and spending time in jail when he should not have spent any time in jail, right? But the race pimps, they spent no time coming out on this. They are angry. And even though I suspect that they're probably running behind on their mortgages and whatnot, you can tell by these two chunky ones right here that they ain't missing a meal. So we know that they're not flat broke, but based on them picking a case like this that was super flimsy and had no weight for them to stand on and making it about race when it wasn't about race, let's be really clear. Daniel Penny did not choke out Neely because he was trying to save the white people on the subway. He choked and restrained Neely because he was trying to save everybody. If he had said, look, dude, I'll let you go if you only attack the black and brown people on the subway train, maybe I would be where these overweight BLM people are who can't seem to make the payments on their mortgage. However, I don't side with them because I know that Penny was saving everybody of every race on that subway train, not just the white folk.
How can you preach love to racists? That got Dr. King killed. How can you promote love to a nation that is built on theft and genocide?
That's right.
What we preach is unity, black unity, Stop begging this system to justify our lives. Stop begging this system for justice. When things happen to you, you step up and defend yourself. Just like everybody else seeks justice on their own, just like everybody else has vigilantes, we need some black vigilantes.
That's right.
People want to jump up and choke us and kill us for being loud. How about we do the same when they attempt to oppress us?
First of all, shut up, dummy. You're running your mouth out there and you know you have nothing to stand on. This is why nobody takes you people serious. This is why your little movement, nobody respects it. It's based on lies. It's based on money. It's based on broke ass people just sitting out there begging for more money. I mean, look at the leather jacket the chick on the left is wearing. How many cows died to make that jacket? But this race pimping fool is talking about promoting love. I have never ever seen any of these people promote love in any kind of way. In fact, he even talks about unity. Now, he does say black unity. After he says the word unity, he does mention and corrects himself, black unity. So he's not interested in actual unity, right? He quotes Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was talking about unity. Martin Luther King did not say, hey, let's get all black people together and just unite there, screw the white people. No, he talked about unity in general with all races. This guy is specifically stating, oh wait, I didn't mean all unity, I meant just us, black unity. So this guy is talking about separation. This guy's not talking about love. This guy is trying to preach hate. There's nothing but hate in his little speech here. When these race pimps sit up here and are running short on cash, and they're like, we can't pay the bills. We need to find something out there. And since there's not really anything out there that they can trumpet as being their next cause, they pick a stupid one like this that has no bearing, right? When he talks about caring for this and caring for that, you know, I reported this yesterday. Jordan Neely was on a list of the 50 most needy people, homeless people, who needed care because they were violent, because they were drug users, and because they were homeless. Think about this. There ain't just a couple of hundred homeless people in New York. This is a city with millions of people. Was it 8 million people live in New York City? This guy is narrowed down to being on 50. The list of 50 of the top neediest homeless people in New York. Let me ask the fat race pimps here a quick little question. If you really cared about Jordan Neely, and if you really cared about any other black people, because this is just a hunch. This is not a race thing. It's simply a hunch. I would be willing to bet that out of those 50 needy people, the other 49 besides Jordan Neely on that same needy list in New York, there's probably at least one other black person on there. So if these race pimps don't care about white people, which clearly they don't, in fact, they hate white people, it's very obvious, then their job should be really easy to take that list of 50 if they cared about black people, if they cared about the needy, the underprivileged, right? Why don't you go get the list of 50 and help them out? You didn't know who Jordan Neely was before this took place. Do you really want to help people out? I mean, really? What do you do when there's not something like this taking place? Are you actually helping people? Instead of buying the 6 or 7 houses with all the money that Kamala Harris and everybody else drums up for you, are you using any of that money for inner city kids to try to help them, to mentor them, to get them on the straight and narrow? Or do you wait until they break the law and get strangled or shot and then come out beating your chest and act like, oh, look at me, I'm willing to die for these people? Where were you before they committed those crimes? Where were you when they needed that help? Jordan Neely needed help. I'm not sympathizing with the guy because the guy threatened to kill people on the subway train. However, like I said in my video yesterday, The dude had mental problems. I feel bad for him. Yeah, it's possible to feel bad for somebody and also be mad at them because they're a criminal. That can happen. Where were these people? They were nowhere because they didn't care. They don't care about the Jordan Neelys of the world until they meet the Daniel Pennies of the world. That's all they care about. As long as these people are suffering in silence, they don't care about them. If they're not in a headline, they don't mean squat to these people. And don't let them fool you and tell you otherwise. Now, I'm going to tell you another person who can kiss my you-know-what. Jordan Neely's dad. Neely's dad, who doesn't seem like he was a really positive influence on Jordan Neely's life, came out immediately after the verdict and said, "I miss my son." In fact, he was in the courtroom when the verdict was read and was escorted out after an audible outburst with expletives. So because he gets a little bit of steam in him, because these BLM people fire him up, now he wants to help his son. Now that he doesn't have to help his son, it's easy to act like I would have done anything for my son, even though you didn't. Now that you don't have any real responsibility and your son is not around, so you're not going to be held accountable for actually helping him, it's easy to say, I would have done anything to save his life. Where were you? Your son was 30-something years old. You were his dad that whole time. Think about that, folks. This is a person who's probably sitting back only when people are around, because clearly he didn't care about his son. I mean, let's be real here. He didn't care about his son. But when people are around, oh my God, they took my son. It's injustice. I'm going to say this like I said in the case of the United Healthcare CEO being shot. It is possible to have two different emotions involved in the same situation. I do feel bad for Jordan Neely's dad, but I also fault him. Why do I feel sorry for him? First of all, well, I feel bad for him because I can't imagine. I have a son, and I have one child, and he's a 16-year-old special needs son. I can't imagine my life without him. Now, granted, my life is centered around my son for various reasons. I'm not going to act like I'm better than everybody else. I have to be involved in my son every day because he is completely helpless. I have to brush his teeth, I have to dress him, put his shoes on, put his socks on. I do everything for him. I take him everywhere. I do everything for him. I put him to sleep at night. Everything has to be done for him. So I would be a real piece of crap if I abandoned my responsibilities for my son. But nevertheless, my world literally revolves around my son. But I'd like to think that it would kind of be like that anyway, even if he could take care of himself. Those of you out there that have neurotypical children, I'm sure you feel very close to your children. I'm sure you feel for your children. I'm sure you do your best for your children. You go out of your way to make sure that they're taken care of. When you see them taking that little stray off the beaten path, you do what you can to help them. When you see them get involved in drugs, you do your best. You try to get them help. When you see them involved with crime, like Neely, you do your best. You try to help them out. Where was Jordan Neely's father for 30-something years? Why just now are we seeing you want to step in the picture when there's no Jordan Neely to take care of? Because it looks good on you. That's why. It looks good on you to say these things now. And now you might actually get a little bit of money out of it because maybe somebody pays you to speak at a BLM riot, right? Maybe you actually get some mileage out of this. Maybe you actually become something now. When you seem like you were a loser, deadbeat dad for 30-something years. Maybe now is your time to shine based on what your son gave up. And again, I don't blame parents for the bad choices that their kids make all the time, but parents do have an impact on their children and their children's choices. So while you may not be directly responsible for every poor choice that your son made, Mr. Neely, you're very much responsible for some of those choices. Now, at the same time, like I said, both of those things can coexist. Knowing that you have, and you won't admit this, the reason you are outraged right now is because if you are a God-fearing man or any kind of a person that has any kind of a moral compass, even though it might be cloudy, You know that you failed your son. You know you did nothing to help your son out. And that's guilt playing on you right there. That weight you feel on you, that ain't racism. That ain't a corrupt justice system. That's the weight of guilt weighing down on yo ass right now.
I don't understand the point that you're making.
God save the Queen, man.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America.
Survival!